Hello, hello. Today we're going to be talking about the causes of the Civil War. So, throughout the 1800s, uh, there's going to be a lot of growing differences between the northern states and the southern states in the United States that ultimately causes the outbreak of the conflict known as the Civil War. So, first major issue is slavery. We know that the South is heavily reliant on it to grow their cash crops like tobacco, rice, indigo, and cotton. The North, well, their economy becomes less and less reliant on slavery due to their shift to developing industries like the cotton industry. So there still are a lot of farms in the North, but those farmers do not rely on slave labor to power their farms, okay? As opposed to all those very large southern plantations, they are still heavily reliant on slavery. So most people in the North are going to begin to believe that slavery was morally wrong, like we talked about last week. Now, it's wrong to hold a human in captivity, to own a human as property and force them to work either on your plantation or your home. That's what a lot of people in the North are going to come to believe. And a lot of them are going to join the abolitionist movement and begin advocating to put an end to the practice of slavery in the United States immediately. So the North, like we said, the way their economy was set up, they didn't really need slavery. Okay. And a majority of the abolitionists are going to be from the North. Right? People in the South are going to believe that slavery is a necessary part of life. Slavery is needed. A lot of plantation owners are going to feel as though their plantations will not be profitable without the use, or as profitable without the use of slave labor. All right. They felt as though they needed their slaves to make their plantation successful and gross a large profit. Here you see a map of the states that have practiced slavery heavily. Okay, you see the states here with the white figures. They are non-reliant on slavery. They have very few slaves, if any at all, in all of those northern states. Now, in the southern states, for every purple figure you see on the map, they use 10,000 slaves. Okay, so the total number of slaves in the United States by 1860 was almost 4 million. So as you see, it's a big, big part of life in the southern part of the United States during this time. And there's going to be a growing tension to abolish slavery with a few works, one of them being Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, that's published in the 1850s, is going to be really impactful in that it influences a lot of people to join the abolitionist movement. Okay, a lot of people consider it as a major cause of the Civil War. It convinced a lot of people in the North to want to fight to put an end to slavery after they read about Harriet Beecher Stowe's accounts of the graphic descriptions of slavery that she includes in this novel. Okay, it touches on how harshly some slaves were treated on plantations in the South, and a lot of Southerners were also upset that the novel only talked about Southern plantation owners who treated their slaves very, very poorly. Some of the Southern plantation owners felt that they treated their slaves well. And then a lot of people's point to that was it didn't matter how well you think you treat your slaves. It's still slavery. You're still holding a human in captivity and holding them as property. Right, so that's the point a lot of abolitionists are going to make towards Southern opposition to this novel. Let's talk about how the two cultures differed in the North and the South. So culture, remember we've defined that as the way people live. Okay, so culture in the North, it's mostly urban. So a lot of people are going to be moving to cities like New York, Philadelphia, Boston, and they're going to hold their jobs in the cities. Okay? And a lot of the jobs that people were working in the North included factory jobs. Okay, like we talked about last week, how a lot of people were getting jobs in the cotton mills and the textile industries and places in the northeastern United States, like New York City, Boston, Philadelphia. So those cities are the major ones emerging in the North. And within them, a lot of people are working factory jobs during the Industrial Revolution. Okay, so you see this image depicts where factories exist in the United States. So you see a lot more factories exist in the northern part of the United States when compared to the southern part. Southern part of the United States is going to have very few factories throughout the 1800s. So let's talk about the culture in the South. So the culture in the South, people are living in more rural areas. So instead of having a neighbor, 10 feet away, like you would if you were living in a city, a lot of people in the South, in some cases, won't have neighbors from miles away. Okay. So people are going to live in villages outside of small towns and operate farms and plantations. And a lot of those plantation owners, they're going to rely on slavery to do a majority of the work on their plantation. So here you see where plantations are located and what types of crops they grow. So for instance, this leaf here is to symbolize where tobacco is grown. We see cotton plant being depicted on the map. That's where cotton is being grown throughout the United States. And then we have indigo being pictured in South Carolina and Georgia, and sugarcane in Louisiana and Texas. So because of their cultural differences or just their lifestyle differences overall, people in the North and South are going to find it hard to agree on certain things. Okay, so for instance, what our country's economy should focus on. All right, people in the South are obviously going to argue that it should focus on growing cash crops on large plantations. People in the North a lot of them are going to hold the opinion that the economy during this time should be focused on industry and developing factories. That's where people in the North felt that's where a majority of people should be working in factories, not running plantations and utilizing slave labor, like a lot of Southerners felt.